Welcome back, everyone, to the Retro Chat podcast. My name is Andy Evans, and after a 1 week absence, we are back, bringing you all of the Retro Chat goodness that you have come to expect over the past few weeks. So what is it we're talking about today? Well, let's find out, shall we? So this week, we're going to be talking about Deep Space Nine. In particular, we're going to be talking about one of the most classic two-part episodes in DS9 history, and that is, of course, Past Tense, coming out of season 3. And it really was these two episodes that kind of helped solidify DS9 being on its journey, being where it wanted to go. Before we do all of that good stuff, let's give you some information. So if you want to join us on social media, you can do. You can join us right down here on the screen. Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitch. All you need to do is search for Retro Chat Podcast. You can tweet us directly at Retro Chat Pod, and you can watch us as you're doing right now here on the YouTube channel, which is Retro Chat Podcast UK. If you would like to listen to the audio show and some of the extra content that we put out, then by all means, please do that. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Amazon Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Pandora, iHeart, any of the reputable podcast providers by searching Retro Chat and press subscribe. And I do have one request. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, a comment. Anything you do helps us move up the rankings to bring you some great guests coming on. I also want to say a massive thank you to everybody who joined me for Quiz Night Live a couple of weeks ago. That was the reason we had last week off. It was primarily just to get over that. It's a lot of effort and a lot of work to put in to do a quiz like that. But the results were fantastic. We've ended up now with £161 going directly to Julia's house, which is going to make a massive impact to all of them in terms of what the work that they are doing. And I personally can't thank everybody enough who joined me for that event live, who joined me either as a guest host. So Nick Heath from Nick's Pub Quiz, which is coming back December 1st on YouTube. Just search for that. Lee from Ministry of Slam, more on him a bit later. J. Anthony Frankie from the California Dreams, hosted our entertainment round, and for everyone who was in the chat room watching it live on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitch. It really did mean the world, and we will be doing another one at some point in 2022. But it's not finished. If you want to watch it, you still can do by heading to that YouTube channel right there and searching for Retro Chat Podcast UK. It's still available. It's going to be available. It's not going anywhere. So if you fancy 90 minutes of quizzing action, 5 rounds, 50 questions, and you want to do it over Christmas, for example, and beat the in-laws, you can do. Just check out Quiz Night Live on the Retro Chat YouTube feed. As well as on the Retro Chat feed, what you may also have seen are some extra little bits, short bites, where we're going to take only a couple of minutes, but it's going to be something relating to an episode that we've done, and there'll be a clip of that source material. So, for example, a few weeks ago now, we did the Best of Both Worlds Star Trek episode, and there's a clip on the YouTube channel of the iconic scene where Patrick Stewart, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, tells Will Riker to leave the ship and let Commander Shelby take over. So check that out on the YouTube feed at Retro Chat Podcast UK. Right, let's do it. Let's talk all about Deep Space Nine and Past Tense, because really Past Tense was the 57th and the 58th episode. And it was also the last one to air before the premiere of Voyager, which we're going to be touching on in a few weeks. And it's also the first episode at that time to not feature any scenes on the DS9 station itself. So one of the criticisms that Deep Space Nine had right from the beginning was the fact that it wasn't Starship based. You know, it was sat on a static station, hence why they brought the Defiant in at the beginning of season 3. And this episode opens up on the Defiant. So the basic premise is a transporter accident sends Commander Sisko, Dr. Bashir, and Jadzia Dax back in time to a moment, a pivotal moment within Earth's history. And the episode received acclaim for analyzing the social issues and the context within the US in a sci-fi context. but for addressing societal issues such as homelessness and poverty and technology. So as I said, it was split into two parts. And part one was really about setting the scene for what was going to happen. It was about identifying what the issues of the story were. It was about considering what the issues were going to be. So when Dax and Sisko and Bashir beam down to Earth from the Defiant, an accident occurs, and they do materialize in San Francisco, but in the year 2024. And Dax is separated from her crewmates. Sisko and Bashir are awakened by a pair of police officers who believe that they're vagrants, and they really warn them to get off the streets. And what you're seeing on screen now, is if you're watching this on the YouTube or the Twitch feed, is the trailers from that episode. You can see such a difference compared to what you would normally expect from Deep Space Nine. I mean, it was just levels of violence that we hadn't seen at that point on any Star Trek incarnation. Sisko and Bashir are escorted to what's called the Sanctuary District. And this is a fenced-off ghetto that's used to contain the poor, the sick, the mentally disabled. Really, anyone who can't support themselves. Sisko realizes that they've arrived days before what's called the Bell Riots, which is a violent confrontation within the San Francisco Sanctuary District. And Sisko remembers this is a watershed moment in human history. Dozens are going to be killed, including an individual named Gabriel Bell, who was the leader of the demonstration. Bell would become a hero eventually because of his self-sacrifice while protecting hostages. And as a result of his heroism, attitudes towards the disadvantaged would begin to change. And because they couldn't find a building to sleep in, Sisko and Bashir end up living in the street. Attending an affluent party with the person who saved Dax, called Brinna, she realizes that Sisko and Bashir have been taken to the sanctuary and sets out about finding them. Back in the 24th century, the crew on the Defiant, so Kira, Odo, and Chief O'Brien, lose contact with Earth as all traces of the Federation vanishes. And that's because Gabriel Bell has died, and that's radically altered the timeline. O'Brien calculates several possible time periods in which the three of them might have arrived, and Kira and O'Brien begin transporting to one period at a time in order to search for them. So then we move on to part two. And part two is when Sisko, who's now posing as Gabriel Bell, and Julian Bashir return to the employment center. And they return just as it's stormed and rioted by a group of disgruntled sanctuary residents, and its staff and police are taken hostage. Sisko takes on leadership of the revolt. He's trying to ensure that no one gets hurt, and he understands that at the resolution of the revolt, Gabriel Bell must die. And he makes demands to the governor, insisting they be given airtime to express their grievances. He wants the districts to be closed. He wants the people to be given opportunities to earn an honest living. And the riots really are just kind of going. Anyone who can remember the London riots back in 2012. Dax is watching on from Brinna's office, knowing that the Sisko and Bashir are caught and they're in danger. And she heads down to find them. And she sneaks through the lines via a sewer pipe and is caught and then delivered to the employment center to explain herself. At that point, she's caught up with in secret by Sisko and Bashir, and she sneaks back out. With only enough energy for one more transport, Kira and O'Brien finally transport themselves to the correct time in history, and they make contact with Dax. They stand by to rescue Sisko and Bashir if they can, and it's a close call because the SWAT teams are moving in on the employment center to end the riot once and for all. And they open fire, they kill the leaders of the revolt. Sisko takes a bullet in the shoulder to protect the hostages and survives. Once the riots are over, the two police officers who first confronted Sisko and Bashir agreed to slip Sisko's identification with Bell's name onto one of the dead men, and also to tell the truth about what happened. The DS9 officers then beamed back to the Defiant and finds everything is back to normal. The only difference in time is that Bell's entry in the historical records now shows Sisko's picture in place of his own. So not the first time that Ben Sisko has altered history, and you find more about that in season 5 in the Trials and Tribulations. Now, the development of this episode really was about centering on societal issues, and the Attica prison riot served as an inspiration for the Bell riots from this two-parter. And another inspiration for the episode were the writer's experiences with homeless people within California. And according to the commentary of the DVD, as the episode was finishing production, an article appeared in the LA Times describing a proposal by then Mayor Richard Riordan to create fenced-in havens for the city's homeless, to make downtown LA more desirable for business. And the cast and the crew was shocked that this was essentially the same scenario that Past Tense had warned might happen in 3 decades. And it was now being seriously proposed in the present. And shoot forward even more to the era of Trump and the wall containing or barricading Mexico from coming into the States, what he was considering. You can watch the episode now and still see how aspects are coming to fruition within today's society. But how was the episode received? In 2015, Geek.com recommended the episode as essential watching. And that was for their DS9 binge watching guide. Sci-Fi ranked Past Tense as the 7th best time travel plot in Star Trek in 2016. Empire ranked it 39th out of the top 50 episodes. Den of Geek listed Past Tense as one of the best stories of DS9 of all time. It was released on Laserdisc in the US in 1999, released on VHS by Paramount Home, and then it was released as part of the DS9 box set, which had 176 episodes on 48 discs. So there we have it, the story of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the story of Past Tense, the story of how this 2-part episode really set the scene going forward for what was going to happen within Star Trek lore. That's it for me for this edition of the Retro Chat podcast. Coming up next week, I'm going to be joined by my guest, Lee, who will be talking all about the iconic series Street Hawk. But until then, thanks for joining me. Don't forget, join us on our socials, which are at the bottom of the screen. Subscribe to us on the audio feed. We will see you next week right here on the Retro Chat podcast. Until then, bye-bye.